Good evening and welcome to the Madison DX Club's April program. And I'd like to ask our immediate past president and program chairman, Bob, to introduce our speaker. Bob?
Yes, well, I'm delighted. Tonight we have Ken Claerbout for K4ZW. Ken is, my first contact with Ken, I worked him on 160 meters when he was in Mongolia.
Oh, wow.
So he gets around, and that's a contact that I will not ever forget. But most of you perhaps would recognize Ken from all his activities, his contributions, and his operating from ET3AA. And I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit about that tonight. But Ken has a double E degree and a master's degree in telecommunications. He's worked for many years as a telecommunications specialist in the diplomatic service, and currently he's working on some FM projects in Africa with the Voice of America. He's also director of YASMI organization. So I'm looking forward to this. It should be a very interesting program. Ken, whenever you're ready. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Very good, Bob. First off, I want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Yes.
All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll get that up and running here. Oops, let me just, all right, you guys seeing that okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much, Bob. Yeah, there were some great segues for this program tonight. Someone brought up ET3AA, and you had mentioned South Sudan. We're going to cover both of those. And one other comment I wanted to make, Bob, about your beverage. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there is an engineering axiom for beverages, and that is that the best beverages are those that run on a neighbor's property. So I think you're great success. Anyways, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. As I mentioned to the guys earlier on, it's particularly nice to join this group, being a native of Wisconsin. I grew up in Sheboygan County, and Virginia. We'll cover some of that here in a bit. So here's a look at what we're going to cover tonight. This thing will run about 35 minutes or so, and there is time for questions at the end. How I got my start on the continent of Africa, some of the economics of ham radio, South Sudan, Z81Z, look at a couple operations from Somalia, because I think they really kind of capture some of the challenges of operating in that part of the world, ET3AA, Youth on the Air program, as that is starting to ramp up in Africa as well. And then I've got a short video at the end, about 2.5 minutes, I want to share with the group. So, in putting this together, I went to Club Log and took a look at the top 100 countries for North America, and I plugged out the ones that are in Africa, and you see those here. You know, a lot of them, the rare ones, are actually some of the French islands, which haven't been all that active in recent years. There are a couple that are on the actual continent itself, on the mainland. And I was quite surprised to see Ethiopia up that high at number 58. And I guess we have some work to do there yet. And then the other one, which we'll touch on tonight, is number 80, Z8 and South Sudan. So it just gives you kind of a peek at some of the more rare entities in Africa as far as North America goes. Now, one of the reasons for this, I gave a presentation some years ago out in Seattle on operating from Africa. And one of the reasons that I think some of the numbers are up there a bit is that for our friends in W6, W7 out west, Central Africa and Eastern Africa are difficult. Those are long hauls. For example, from Seattle to Ethiopia is 8,400 miles. from Seattle to Chad, 7,550. So I suspect that the higher demand out west is what runs those numbers up a little bit. So this journey kind of begins in 1984. Bob had mentioned I took a job with the Diplomatic Telecommunications Service. I moved out to Virginia here in '84 as a result of that. And before I went into my training program, things were delayed a little bit. So they came around to some of us and said, "Hey, would you like to go TDY," which is just the government way of saying, you want to travel for a few weeks. And in this case, I think it was 5. And I immediately jumped on. I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. Would love to go overseas. Why not?" And then a few minutes later, I thought, "Well, wait a minute, but where to?" And they said, "Well, going to send a few people to London and a couple to Liberia, where our regional hub was, and they'll travel from other parts of Africa from there." Well, the beauty of speaking to this group and all of you with your backgrounds and everything, I think you probably already know which one I picked, and I don't have to explain why either. You kind of get the idea behind it. So I did go to Liberia and operated as Echo Lima 2 Charlie Delta. Now, I want to step back just a little bit. I was licensed in '77, and in '79, Carl Rentz, K4YT, was very active from Africa. He worked for the government, working on telecommunication systems at our embassies and traveling the world. And we'd get the weekly DX bulletin, and Carl would be here in one place and going to another one next. And you see some of the cards up here. WD9DEE was my novice call, by the way. But anyways, I tracked his travels and I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great to have a job like that? I mean, to be able to work on all that cute, cool radio stuff and communications and satellites and travel the world doing it. So that was always kind of my dream. Was like, I would really love to have a job like that someday. Let me back up here. Well, lo and behold, there was an ad in QST in 1983 for the job I eventually got. I applied. One thing led to another. I went down to the federal building in Chicago to interview. Back in those days, a lot of us took our license exams in Milwaukee. I don't know if they came to Madison, but the other option was to hop on the train and get off right at the federal building there in Chicago. So I went down there and did that. So that's kind of how I got my start. Liberia, I brought along an antenna for 160 meters, did some operating from there on 160, made a grand total of 3 QSOs. It was John G3PQA, some CT1, and another VE1. I don't have their calls handy, but it just kind of got things started for me. So time went on, and in 2004, I took a job working as engineering for doing a lot of projects for Voice of America. Now, when we think of VOA, a lot of us think of the shortwave, the big shortwave stations and so on. That certainly is a legacy platform, and some of that is still going on today. What a lot of people don't know, though, is over the years, they built up quite a big FM radio network as well. FM, of course, being local in the various cities, shortwave more of a global coverage. But at the high water mark, we had over 100 FM stations around the world. In about 2007, there was a big expansion push in Africa. So one morning, I'm sitting in my office, and my boss and the guy who's running the FM program, they're standing in my doorway with kind of funny look. And I said, "Yeah, what's up, guys?" I said, "Would you like to go to Bangui?" Thought for a minute. I said, "Yeah, sure." They're like, "Do you even know where that is? You would go?" I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? And by the way, yeah, I know it's the capital of Central African Republic. I can give you the prefix if you want." That's one thing about us DXers. We know our geography. So I said, "Sure, I would go." And they're like, "Really? You would go?" Yeah, sure. What it was is our ambassador there wanted a VOA FM station, and he wanted it in time for the 4th of July celebration at his residence. So he could turn the switch on during the party. No one else would go there. And so that's kind of why they were surprised I would go. But I had been to Africa before. I was comfortable with it. I thought, hey, this sounds like a cool project. Why not? So I went and did the survey. Came back, we shipped all the equipment out there, and within 6 weeks, we had 6 weeks, 6 weeks time, we were on the air. So you can see 101.7, just a 1,000 watt transmitter, and only 5 watts reflected. So it looks like we did a pretty good job with the antenna. And that's just the rack of equipment there. Okay, so let's take a look at global activity as far as amateur radio goes. As we know, the activity is alive and well in Europe, and you got to be a little bit careful here because like I said, I grew up in the black hole. I know what it's like, but being out here on the East Coast, we do benefit from a lot of activity in Europe. Activity in China, Indonesia, Bangladesh is exploding. Thailand was reported at one time to have like the third largest ham radio population. Now, we don't always hear these stations because a lot of these could just be VHF licenses. You know, unfortunately, some of them get licensed and they don't have a station to get on the air and so on, but the licensing numbers are there. Well, what about Africa? Okay, I found an IARU report that said there are 15,000 licensed amateurs in Africa. That seems awfully high to me, but I have no reason to refute that. So that could be the case. And again, some of it may be too that people have licenses, but they don't have any way to get on the air. You know, as we know, most of the activity is by non-residents, DXpeditions, contesters. In recent years, we've seen some pretty big operations from Africa as far as DXpeditions go. And there was a voodoo group years ago that would go and contest there every year for CQ Worldwide CW. So why the lack of activity by the local population? Well, let's take a quick look at the economics of ham radio. First off, at the equipment. AI told me that the median salary in the US is about $65,000. That was in 2025. So you can buy an ICOM 7300 for less than $1,000 today with the rebates and everything. So, you know, not a big deal. Most of us, we can afford a radio. You can even find something cheaper. Now, I know there's more building the station, but just as a reference point, you know, it's not a substantially large chunk of money for most of us. AI also told me that the average annual income in Africa is about $10,000, but you got to keep in mind there too that there's wide income disparity. And there are a lot of people that are living well below that number. So it could be 10% or more of your annual income just for a radio. Not too many of us would go out and spend $6,500 or $7,000 for a radio. I know some of us do, and you know, maybe more than one, but for the average Joe, that's a pretty big chunk of money to shell out for just the radio. Here's the important thing too. Import duty tax can be anywhere from 50 to 100%. So you just, you know, have doubled the price of the radio potentially. And I've got a story on that coming up here a little bit later, where you'll see that in action actually. Okay, let's take a look at licensing. In the US, I think it's $35 for 10 years. You know, the dollar amount's nothing. I know there was a lot of grumbling about having to do it, and God knows the system to renew your license is pretty brutal. But you know, from a dollar cost wise per year, it's really there's nothing to it. In Congo, 9Q, I was told one time it was $10 per year for locals. That's doable. That's not too bad. Some countries, it can be $50 a year or equivalent currency of $210 a year. It can get a little bit pricey. I think most of you probably know Don Jones, K4ZW, who's been very active in Malawi and getting young kids on the air there. It's $50 a year for a license. You know, imagine if the FCC started charging us $50 a year. Wouldn't sit too well. And you know, a lot of these kids don't have the wherewithal to pay that. As you'll see here in a bit, though, we are able to help them out with that. But just kind of gives you a reference of why sometimes a local activity isn't what it is in other areas. My Z81Z license was $300. I call it a special American price because he probably thought, this guy can afford it. I got that license shortly after South Sudan gained their independence. I was in the communications office, and I worked with these guys getting the FM broadcast license for VOA2. And he said, that's $300. And we went back and forth. I told him that was awfully high. But at the end of the day, it was like, okay, look, this is a brand new country. This new prefix are starting to issue because it was ST0 initially. They're coming out with the Z8 calls. I would kind of like to do this. I've blown $300 on far more stupid things. So I said, all right, fine. We'll pay for it. And then I told him, by the way, if you forget to put an expiration date on it, that's fine too. And that's actually what happened. So I've made out pretty good. Okay, but the economics, it is possible. There's support from groups like Indexa. They've been helping with equipment in some places, typically if it's a little bit more of a rare location, but I've worked with them over the years. They're helping to support some of this activity. As Bob mentioned, I'm vice president and a director of the YASME Foundation. This is right up our alley as far as supporting projects in emerging countries, and especially if it's youth related. So we've been helping out with a lot of stuff over the years. The last one or two groups of new operators in Malawi, we paid for the license fee and some support for a couple other things. So helping out there where we can. Don Jones, as I said, K4ZW is doing tremendous work in Malawi and Comoros. I was just at the DX convention in California in Santa Maria this past weekend. He gave a great presentation, but doing a tremendous job. And he's kind of the figurehead of it, doing most of the heavy lifting, but there are a few other people behind it. And it just goes to show what one man or a group of a couple people can do to have a real impact and some amazing results. IARU Region 1, which covers Europe, Africa, has also been supporting some activities in Africa. We will see here in a little bit this Youth on the Air program they have, which has become very popular and has been some participation from Africa youth as well. Okay, let's take a look at South Sudan. As I said, number 80, Z8, newest country, gained its independence in 2011. Z81Z was one of the very first licenses. Z81 was the prefix for Juba, for the capital. You get to pick your suffix. And I said, I like Z. And the guy's like, why do you want that? I said, I don't know. I think it sounds good. It's good on CW. He's like, all right, if you want it, it's yours. So that was good. Getting a license was very doable. It wasn't a problem at all to go in there and get the license, especially if you're willing to pay the $300 or whatever they charge the next person coming in. Unfortunately, there's a new director of telecommunications, been there for a few years. I think he's got a military background, but he does not like ham radio, and they are not issuing any new licenses. As a matter of fact, YASME sponsored two guys from the communications ministry in South Sudan to come up to Ethiopia to see the club station there and hopefully start the ball rolling for something similar in South Sudan. They're on board for doing it, but we just can't get a license because the big guy isn't interested in issuing ham radio licenses. Dia and I have been told, you guys can continue to operate. It's okay since you had licenses, but anyone new coming in there is not getting a license. And I've been contacted by several groups who have wanted to do DXpeditions, and my response is basically, look, if you want to try, go ahead. But we've been going at this for a few years, no new licenses, and okay. So you want to go to South Sudan? One thing you can do is go to the State Department Travel Advisory webpage, and this is what you're going to see. Big red, do not travel. Unrest, crime, health, kidnapping, hostage taking, you name it. Now, I've been there a couple of times for work. And when I go for work, all of my travel anywhere in the city, from the airport and everything, is in an armored vehicle with an embassy driver. When I would operate from Dia's place, ZA1D, by the way, he is a fantastic guy, just a really good guy. And we've always had a lot of fun together. But the way it would work is if I wanted to go to his place and operate, I'd have to schedule a driver to take me there. And he would sit there and wait while I operated and hung out with Dia, and then he would take me back to the residential compound where the housing was. We didn't stay in local hotels or anything. And we had to be back before curfew. Early on, I think curfew was around midnight. Last time or two, it was about 8 o'clock. So you're thinking, well, really, a government vehicle to go play ham radio. But you got to remember that the people that are there, are assigned there at the embassy, are there for like a year, 18 months. They do everything they can to accommodate people assigned there so that, they can still enjoy themselves, enjoy their hobbies and things like that. And they want to keep them safe. So they, they'll put up with some of that stuff and help support it as much as they can. Um, so let's see. Okay. January 2025, I went back to visit Dia, and we've been talking about this for years. I said, I got to get back and operate because he doesn't do CW. And I just wanted to get on the air again from there. I mean, it's a lot of fun for obvious reasons. So January 2025, I went there, and I've always flown Ethiopian Airlines from Addis twice daily. They've got round trips into Juba. The flight's about an hour and a half. It is a little expensive though, about 800, maybe $1,000 round trip. So this time I talked to a friend of mine who lives there, and I said, "Hey, I'm coming over. I'd like to pay you a visit." And he says, "Yeah, great. Let me pick you up at the airport." And I thought, okay, good. That's kind of what I was angling for anyways. But so he meets me in immigration. And then he's got another guy with him, and he introduces me to this guy, and he says, "Yeah, he's the director of the airport here." I said, "Oh, all right, nice." So we get my bags and everything, and we just go past the security, past customs and the scanner to scan your bags and everything. The airport director's like, "He's with me." And we just walked right out the airport. I thought, now that's good to know people. It was very nice. And I gave the guy, I think, a 20 when we got outside. Certainly worth that. Picture my visa there. Now, so I got in, I operated. It's time to go home. Okay, this be a piece of cake. Looking forward to getting on the airplane, heading back up to Addis. And I'm in immigration, and the guy says, "Where's your registration paperwork?" I don't know what you're talking about. He says, "No, your registration paperwork. Where is it?" And I said, "Well, I've got my visa. I mean, it's stamped. I don't know what you want." So he calls some military guy over, and this is a pretty big dude. I mean, he kind of reminded me of Idi Amin, if anyone remembers him, the guy in Uganda years ago. And he starts quizzing me, and I'm getting a little frustrated with this. And he says, shows me that stamp, and he says, "You are supposed to go and register within 72 hours. JIA is Juba International Airport. When you arrive, you're supposed to go over to wherever and register." Well, I'm sure it would have cost some additional money. I didn't know that. They never said anything when I arrived. He says, "Well, you need to read your passport." Well, who does that? So now what do I do? It's kind of funny because when I got back, I mentioned it to Dia, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I kind of forgot." He says, "We probably should have done that." Yeah, thanks. Now you tell me. But anyways, I mean, I'm kind of stuck. He's not going to let me go. But now what do I do? Thankfully, I had an expediter, someone who kind of walks you through the formalities at the airport, and he was still there. So I said, "Hey, I got a problem, man. It's this alien registration thing. I didn't know anything about it." And he thinks for a minute. He says, "You got any cash?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure." So I pull out three $10 bills. He said, "That's great." He said, "Put it in your passport. Go back to that military guy, hand him your passport." And so I did that. Guy disappeared for about 5 minutes. He came back and he said, "Okay, you're good to go." Handed me my passport minus the $30, and off I went. And then again, that was well worth the money because they could have held me and not let me go. And I really didn't feel like spending another day there. I mean, I don't know if they would have held me somewhere or what would have happened. Okay, so Somalia, 6 Oscar 7 Alpha in 2019, 6 Oscar 3 Tango 2025. It's not as easy as it looks. These were some comments made by, I think, mostly 6 Oscar 7 Alpha, but they really, like I said, they really capture the essence of what people deal with when they operate from some of these places. Number one, you agree with the hotel manager to set up antennas. He refuses when you arrive, and all your antennas are to remain invisible. Gosh, now what do you do? I mean, here you are in this foreign country. Things are hard enough as it is. You don't really know the lay of the land. You spend a lot of time and effort planning, money getting there. People are waiting for you to get on the air, and then you run into this. Not good. Here's another one. You ask for a license, but they have no idea what a license in amateur radio is about. So you have to kind of teach them, give them input in what a license should be. And we actually ran into that a little bit in South Sudan because of the new country, and they were setting up their governance. And so we kind of talked them through some of that, and that's fine. I mean, most of these do not have an amateur radio program and licensing or regular licensing or exams or anything of that nature. Here you set up a nice beverage just to realize some locals move it, take it down, steal it during the night, bring spare parts. Well, if you've been to Home Depot anytime recently and look at the price of a 500-foot spool of copper wire, you can bet if it's outside and they've got access to it that it might very well you might be operating in the middle of the night, have a nice run going, and all of a sudden your receiver goes dead, and there goes your spool of expensive copper wire. It happens. This one's from 6 Oscar 0 X-ray. You think you have a lifetime license, but the ministry does not recognize what previous governments have done. Ran into that quite a bit for work when we were getting commercial broadcast licenses for VOA-FM. A lot of times they can't even really articulate the process. Well, I'll go here, do this, do this, do this. And we would be on our way to getting a license, and then I would get something from the embassy or someone in country saying, hey, they just had a change of leadership at the Ministry of Telecommunications, the Ministry of Media. Great. So we don't actually start over, but we've got to kind of go back to square one and work things with a new person. So that's always frustrating. I really like this last one. It came, I guess, from an operation in 3 Charlie. You can get the license from the authorities, and they'll tell you, look, this can be very dangerous to your own security. You should probably do something else. So here's another one where you do all the planning and the money involved to get there. Big anticipation. You're going to be on the air from 3 Charlie or 3 Charlie 0. Go over to the ministry, they hand you the license, and they say, you probably shouldn't be doing this. It's pretty dangerous. Go fishing or something. What do you do? I mean, because they could very well be right. So certainly a lot of challenges to deal with. Okay, amateur radio in Ethiopia, something near and dear to my heart. I've spent a lot of time there with my travels in Africa. Ethiopia, Addis, and Ethiopian Airlines is kind of a hub for travel, so I went through there quite a bit. One licensed station, ET3AA, that's it. It's at the Addis Ababa Institute of Technology. Telecommunications, very tightly regulated there. Most African countries I went to, they would have 2, 3, 4 mobile phone providers, internet providers. So you had a little competition, for price and service, that sort of thing. Ethiopia, they've just started to open up the market a little bit, but it's still pretty much Ethotel, which is the government-run entity for mobile phone and internet. We can never get a broadcast license there for FM. I mean, BBC, Radio France, others have tried. Wasn't going to happen. I can hand you the form to apply for an ET3 ham license. They will almost certainly approve it. Very nice people there. But the next step in the process is that it goes to the security ministry for approval. And they have not approved any license application in the last probably 15 years. So everything goes there and dies. We've been trying to expand by going to another university, setting up a club station. As a matter of fact, just today I got a text from one of the guys in Ethiopia, and he said, hey, I was over at this other university. They're really excited. They showed a room where they could put the station. That's great. But now we're still faced with the challenge of seeing if we can't get a license from the government for the club station. As mentioned, I love to do the low bands. I love the challenge. We have operated over the years from downtown Addis. As you might imagine, it's a challenge. We've had some success early on. And then there was a period of a number of years where when the sun set at night, to the morning, the sunrise, or some dusk to dawn thing, something would switch on. Don't know what it was, don't know where it was, but it wiped out the entire HF spectrum. I mean, sometimes, you get a couple of bands get noisy or whatever. This was across the board. So, you couldn't even operate 20 meters at night or 40 or 10 or 15. It just wiped things out. So it kind of put the kibosh on low band operating. This gargantuan thing here, transformer, all these nasty cables, is right outside the compound of the university. So that could easily be a noise source amongst many others. This type of wiring here is not at all unusual. I don't even see any ground in there. Connections aren't even insulated, but that's kind of par for the course. Okay, on the right here is the 160 transmit antenna, Bob Johnson W9XY, and I put up one time. We just kind of threw it up in haste because we wanted to get on the air one night before the sunset. Man, does this thing work. It's on a metal roof. The whole university is metal roof, so I think that certainly helps. It's a 18-meter tall spider pole, one of those fiberglass poles. Now, if you look up here, I don't know if you can see that, near the top is a little bump there. That is a trap for 80 meters. So the way this works is the bottom portion of it resonates on 80. And then on 160, that trap adds a little bit of loading, and there's a whole nother piece of wire that comes off that thing and kind of slopes back to the roof. But it worked pretty well. And I've got a video here. I'm just going to run of it. It's one of the ugliest antennas I've ever put up, but we got on the air the first night, and boy, we had no problem working Europe or the US on 80 and 160. At least they could hear us. The challenge has always been, the limitation has always been, what can we hear? I don't remember if it was that same trip or another one, but we decided we need to get back on 6 meters. So you see this tower on the left. There was a bunch of junk up there, VHF, UHF, 6-meter beam. None of it was being used. A lot of it was in disrepair. So I told Bob, I said, you know what? Let's strip all this junk off of there, refurbish the 6-meter antenna, and go ahead and then put that back up. So we did that. In the middle there is Nagatu, one of the more active guys in the club. DX Engineering, Tim, Terry, and the group there have been so supportive of ET3AA and other efforts in Africa. Very grateful for the support they provided. In this case, they gave us a new run of RG213, about 75 foot, so it wasn't particularly long. And then a new rotor cable too. So there's Nagatu wiring up the rotator. And then on the right, you see the 6-meter beam. Now that thing was pretty weathered. And so we eventually replaced it with I think a 5-element M squared, and that's working pretty well. Now, I know some of you I think it was November of 24, actually worked ET3AA on 6 meters, which is amazing. East Africa from W9. So that was really cool. I don't think we've had any more of that, but we're certainly there trying, and keep our fingers crossed that we get some good openings again. Okay, Ethiopian Customs tried to tax our electronics more than they were worth. This is a headline in a travel blog, and I mentioned earlier about the excessive duty taxes. So one of our trips in, I was bringing that green hair rotator control, and we had a problem rotating the big antenna. And I was in a hurry to leave the trip before, so I grabbed the controller thinking it was probably something wrong with the controller. Turned out that wasn't the case. There's a 240-volt circuit that feeds something up on the tower, and that had gotten shut off in a breaker box. So the controller worked. I brought it back. Well, in customs, they opened up this one bag. It had the controller and a bunch of stuff, and he pulled it out, and he's like, "What is this?" So I explained to him without being too specific, and I just said, "Hey, look, this belongs to the university. It's been here for 10 years. It was brought in already. Duty has been paid on it. It wasn't working. So out of the kindness of my heart, I went to fix it. I'm bringing it back. I'm going to give it back to him. What's the big deal?" He says, "Well, show me your papers." Right. I mean, I don't have papers for it. So he comes back a few minutes later. He says, "Well, it's going to be $600 duty." And I laughed. I said, "You're kidding." I said, "Where'd you come up with that number?" Well, here. So he took me in his office. He had done a Google search for green hair and engineering rotators, And I don't know, they were $500 or $600. So whatever the price was for a new one, that was going to be the duty. And I said, well, I'm not paying that. This is ridiculous. It's used. We've already paid to have it imported one time. Why am I having to do it again, especially as a new unit? So it was pretty obvious that we weren't going to get anywhere that day. We had flown from Chicago to Addis nonstop on Ethiopian Airlines, so it's a 13-hour trip. I just wanted to get to the hotel. I thought we'll just deal with this another day. We went back a second time, still no luck. Although at one point they mentioned something about, well, if you can get something from the university, maybe we'll just do a small fine of, I think it was 8,500 birr. At that time, was equivalent to about $160. Oh man, that's just not right. I still don't want to pay that. But another day or two went by, and finally, Bob Johnson on the right there, myself and Sergey, the guy on the left, we went back out a third time. This was around midnight, and Sergey says, "Look, just let me handle it." So, okay, fine, that's good. But I said, if you can work out a deal where we can get it for $160. I said, just to hell with it. Do it and just get it back because we're here operating. We can't turn the antenna. And, I really don't want to leave it behind. So turned out that was the case. He was able to spring it for that and we were good to go. But it was rather trying and I still remember it well. And I'm always a little nervous every time I bring something in. Most times they don't even look, but that time they did and it cost us a few bucks. Okay, so I think, anytime you go to a place like this, it's always good to leave something behind, something positive, leave a footprint. So that guy on the left there in the Green Bay Packers sweatshirt is our driver, Selman. Bob brought him a Packer sweatshirt. He is wearing it just about every time I'm there. So first and foremost, we planted the Green Bay Packer flag in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I think that's important. So we got that done. This picture on the right is a story I've told before. Maybe you've heard it. I'll just go through it quickly. But one of the trips Bob and I were on, he decided to stay a few days longer. And I said, well, I got to get back for work. So I was flying Ethiopian Airlines from Addis to Frankfurt, Germany, and then picked up United from Frankfurt back to Washington. This was during the COVID period. So everyone's wearing masks. I get on the plane, I'm putting my bags in the overhead, and there's some crew standing by around there. And this one female says, I know you. Kind of looked at her. I thought, I don't recognize you. And she says, no, I know you. So I pulled my mask down, saying, just to kind of indicate, look, I don't think I am who you think I am. And she pulled her mask down. And I said, a doula. Well, it turns out she was one of the first people I met at ET3AA some years ago. She left the university to pursue a job with Ethiopian Airlines as a mechanic and really kind of lost touch with her. But here she was working our flight that night. They always have a mechanic on there when they fly in case there's any problems or they get up to Frankfurt and there's issues, they got someone to deal with it. She was assigned to the flight. She saw me, she recognized me. So we sat together and we were talking, about old times. And she said, I really have fond memories of that Echo Tango 3 Alpha Alpha and operating the station and everything. And she was a pretty good operator too. And I just thought, how cool is that? Someone remembers you all those years later for something you did, and it's something they remember and they had a good time. So that felt good. Okay, Yoda, Youth on the Air. I don't know how familiar, if you are at all, this program. IARU Region 1, again, which is Europe and Africa, has a pretty robust youth program. And the highlight of it every year is a summer camp, typically in Europe. One year was in South Africa, but it's a week-long international camp hosted in a different country within Region 1, featuring workshops, kit building, and social activities. Now, we've been trying to get some youth to attend this. The biggest problem we have is it's very difficult for anyone in Africa to get a visa for Europe or for the US, especially if they're youth. We've gotten a few up there, but most times they're just not able to get a visa. The other issue is, the cost of a ticket. Once they get there, the camp costs are covered, but getting to the event can be, $800 anywhere up to $1,500. So Yasmi has helped over the years to sponsor a couple of kids to go that where we have been able to get a visa, but the participation's been somewhat limited. We are looking at hopefully doing some planning this year in 2026, but in 2027, having a Yoda event probably in Nairobi, Kenya. I've been talking to Andy, 5Z4 Victor Japan, about doing that. So that, if anyone from Europe wants to come down, that's fine, because they can get in a visa to go to Kenya or whatever. But it would be easier for the kids to travel to Kenya. Visa requirements aren't nearly as strict. Cost-wise, it's not so bad. So we're trying to get this planted and going on the continent itself. And then while I've got this up here about Yoda, again, if you're not familiar with it, the Region 2 Yoda, which covers the U.S. and Central and South America, is starting to pick up some speed too. They've had some really good camps in recent years, doing a lot of activities. We all know that. Let me back that up here. Okay. We all know that we could certainly use some more youth in our hobby, and I think this is one way of doing that. So if you're not familiar with it, just take a minute sometime to go to youthontheair.org, check out what they're doing. And if you're interested in helping, I'm sure they could. There's a donate button. They could always use some money to help put their events on. Yasmi helps to sponsor it. ARDC is another one too. But there's not always a whole lot we can do. And these kids, they're fine. I mean, they run these programs pretty much on their own, but sometimes it's financial help that they need. So check that out, because the program in this region is starting to pick up steam, and we need to keep that going. Okay, so this is it. This is the video I talked about at the end. This is about 2.5 minutes. You should hear the music with it as well. If not, just enjoy the scenery. But the reason I put this on here is because a lot of the presentation is focused on the challenges in Africa and the problems, and we see it on the news too. It's real. I mean, it's there. It's a real thing. But I can also tell you, over all the years that I've been there, I've just seen some fantastic sights. The natural beauty, met some wonderful people, lifelong friends. And so I kind of feel the need to balance the earlier stuff with the good stuff as well. So I just wanted to share this video to close things out. So I'm going to run this again. Hopefully you can hear the music. If not, well, we'll just let the video itself run. Okay, so there you have it. A couple of quick notes on that video. Rwanda was one of the countries that was covered. I've been there several times. Certainly their history and the genocide and stuff is horrific, but talk about a turnaround. I've never been to a place more green and more lush. In my last trip there a couple of years ago now, we actually went out in the countryside near the border with Congo with 9Q5. Just incredible scenery, the lakes and everything beautiful. And two quick elephant stories. So Botswana, we have a huge VOA shortwave transmitting station. You know what one of the biggest problems is that we have there? The elephants. They crashed the cyclone fence and get in the antenna field, and God forbid that one of them would want to start wrestling or scratching its back on a guy line for one of the towers, because that would not be good. And I know when the workers go out in the field to do the work, they'll send up a drone and kind of look around to see where the elephants are at before they go out there. And then lastly, I don't know, I thought this was kind of comical. The one time I was in Zambia, it was a small game park. I went there and they only had a female elephant left. And so they said, what happened is they had a baby elephant that ate something poisonous and died, which was kind of sad. And they said the male elephant got kind of old and rambunctious and was fighting all the time, so they had to put it down. And I thought, damn, I'm glad they don't apply that principle to us humans, because that could not be good. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions. These pictures are from Point Noir in Republic of Congo, Tango, November. Again, the place is right on the beach. At night, we go and grab a local beer and have some dinner and watch the sunset on the ocean. And there you have it. So happy to take any questions. Otherwise, Bob, whoever, I'll turn it back to you if you want.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi there. Hi, Ken, and thank you for your presentation. K9IR from south of the Cheddar Curtain. I've been to Africa several times as well, nothing nearly as extensive as you, but I've thought about operating a few times. And your comments kind of confirmed a few of the things that I had heard about operating there or trying to operate there that kind of convinced me to not try to do it. Because among other things, I kind of liked my radios and wanted to keep them and go back home with them. Do you have a general set of recommendations if somebody would want to operate from there, whether it was a specific DXpedition or as part of a trip that would include seeing some of the fantastic scenery there, like knowing the right people, contacting a local, have somebody run interference for you, a list of more likely or better countries to try versus some other ones that, you're just either not going to get a license or
interrupted your ham meeting. It's all right. It's basically, it was a ham talking about contacts he made in Africa. That's all.
I think someone came off mute. So, yeah,
I assume.
great question. I think, and this applies anywhere if you're going to go and operate overseas. Nothing beats making a connection with someone local who will let you use their station. Because we've got that in Ethiopia. I mean, you walk in, you sit down, you're good to go. So, I mean, if you could pull something like that off, that's great. The best thing you can do is try to make contact with someone local who's active. If I've got a particular country in mind, I may go on a packet cluster and see who's been active in the last 6 months and drop them a note. Getting equipment in and out some places isn't a big deal. Others, I had one guy say, I'm going to go to Ethiopia here and I want to bring I'm going to pack my portable radio. And I said, don't do it. You'll never see it again. That's in a lot of places that is difficult. So number one, if you can find someone that you can guest operate, depending on how much you want to do. I mean, if it's just for a couple hours or whatever, that's fine. If you want a little bit more extensive, it could be a bit of a challenge. And then try to find some locals that are active who can guide you as far as licensing or bringing in equipment, even places to operate for that matter. I think that's probably how I would do it. And if your trip is multi-purpose, you want to do some ham radio and some other things as well, and you just got to kind of see what the situation is for each of the countries you're interested in and weigh what makes the most sense. I would always encourage if you're going to go to Africa and you can, do a safari. I did that years ago, just a day one. Fantastic. It was a lot of fun. You know, in Wisconsin or whatever, when you're driving around, you always got to watch out for the deer. They don't run out in front of you. Here we were in the game park, Kruger, and you have to really watch the speed limit. Because we're going along, and it wasn't a deer that ran out right in front of our car. It was a giraffe. And it's like, whoa. So, same things apply. I hope that answered your question. Anything more or anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. My name is Peter Narens in K2IXQ in Los Angeles. And I wanted to thank you, Ken. Great presentation. I was curious. The first slide you showed was a map of Africa with all the countries and the prefixes. How many of those have you been to?
I get asked that question. You'd think I would sit down and count them. Quite a few over the years. I've never been to Nigeria, and I don't really have any interest in going there. Most other places I'll go, but yeah, I mean, we've done work on the West Coast, Togo, Ghana. Geez, I don't know. Let's see what else. Senegal, Central African Republic. Been around both Congos. Rwanda, Zambia, quite a few. It's a good question. I guess maybe I should take the time to count them.
Been to Eritrea?
I have not. And if you look at the U.S. Embassy webpage, they basically, I mean, they don't come out and say it like this, but it reads, it's like the North Korea of Africa.
No, that's pretty exaggerated.
Yeah,
It's a great place. Anyway, thank you again, Ken.
sure. Anyone else?
Talk about Eritrea. U.S. used to have a radar station there during a long time ago, but that's gone. I'm Kaz from Michigan.
Oh,
I'm
I know you.
intruding on the
How you
W9
doing?
group. I'm sorry. But question, years ago there was ET9L, and he was rattling our rafters really loud. I think he was using a broadcast antenna, and he was not in the urban area, so I guess he was hearing very well. But I guess there was some issue with the um, license being um, from a different ministry.
And you'd like to know what happened, right?
Yeah.
Sure, I can answer that. Yeah, it was Echo Tango 7 Lima. It was a group of Ukrainians who had been working in Ethiopia. They'd come for a couple of months and go back home, come back. And I talked to them several times, and we were going to get together for beers, and just didn't work out. They were working at the security ministry, and I think if I remember correctly, there was VHF or a cell tower nearby that they were able to hang some wires off and stuff. They did a fantastic job. As everyone knows, there was only one problem. They never had a license. The year before ET7L, they used the ET3AA license, and that was okay. I don't, maybe it shouldn't have been used away from the university, but they did, and okay, fine. But the ET7L was their last time in country, and they had to have a vanity call sign. They made something up, scribbled up a piece of paper, had someone stamp it, and went on the air. And I talked to them actually before they went on the air, and I said, guys, this isn't right. You know as well as I do that license isn't valid. The reason you did this is because you can't get a license through the proper channels. And we all know the issues there. So I said, you really shouldn't do this. The local society, Ethiopian Amateur Radio Society, is upset. They don't want you to do this. If you screw things up there, you can go home and operate from Ukraine. That's fine. But what you've just done is you've just destroyed amateur radio in country, the little bit we have left, for the kids there that want to operate. And I really encourage them to rethink it, but they didn't. I think it was extremely selfish what they did. It was unfortunate because they made great operators. They worked a lot of people on the low bands as well. If they just reused the ET3AA call sign, those would have all counted. But they had to have their vanity call, and League asked them for their paperwork. They didn't have it. And I think the league rightfully didn't count it. So
Thank you very much. That's what I thought. And also, have you ever had a time when your life was in danger? I'm thinking about K3ZO in South America.
I have not. No, thankfully. Like I said, a couple of places I've gone. Bangui, Central African Republic. It was a couple of years now. Last time I went there, I expected to be picked up at the airport in an armored vehicle, probably with local guard force, but it was American shooters, and they had their weapons right up front seat with them and stuff. And the thing with South Sudan too is it's not terrorism that they're coming for us, for Americans or anything. It's just that it's a very poor country. It's very hard for them to live there. There's a lot of tribal stuff. They've had a couple civil wars, so there's a lot of guns out on the street. And if someone looks at someone the wrong way and they start going at it and bullets start flying, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, it could be bad news. So, but thankfully I have not. Before I go anywhere for work, I have to get approval from the embassy, from the security officer. I have to get approval to come, the dates and everything. And they know I'm there, and they will provide the necessary security. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. That's why I will go most places. There are a few I won't, but for the most part, it's okay.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got one.
Sure.
Yeah, it's Gary W9XT again. Thanks for this talk. It reminds me a long time ago in Senegal, and dealing with the government can be interesting. But one of the things back then they said is that back in Africa, a lot of the languages, they didn't have a word for thing like hobbies, and the only reason a person would have a radio would be because they're a spy or something. Do you think that's improved with better communications, internet, and more technology?
Hey Gary, good to see you again. I think it's just situational. Each one varies. Typically, if you're dealing with the ministries, I mean, they're fairly good, fluent in, a lot of these are Francophone countries, so they speak French, which I do not. But I think, I don't know if it's the language so much, it's just like maybe in South Sudan that someone is in a military background and they have a certain, they know the radios they use there, and they just have this certain idea conjured up that, oh yeah, well, this could be used to stage a coup or something. Some places you can explain what it is and you're good, and others they just don't want to hear anything about it. When I was in Lomé, Togo, 5 Victor, we were sitting there discussing our FM license, and it's kind of a lull in the conversation. I said to the guys, "Hey, are you familiar with amateur radio?" And they're like, "Yeah, so and so over here, Pierre, he's the one that does the licenses." And he pulls up the spreadsheet and he's says, Baldur DJ6SI. Yeah, of course. So, you run into situations like that where it's good, and other times you may get lucky educating them, or you may not. I don't think there's any general rule. It's just kind of situational. It's like, it's like a lot of things too. If you find the right person, a lot of good stuff can happen. If not, then you're probably out of luck. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi, this is Dan, KF6 Papa in Honolulu. I just want to say it's an outstanding presentation. And I have to say, I wish our club had such great presentations, but we'll try to watch them on whenever we get a chance. It's about 6-hour time difference, a 5-hour time difference here. So thank you very much for a great presentation, Ken.
Well, you're welcome, and thanks for that. And really, Bob and the Madison Group do a great job with these presentations. And Bob and I guess we initially talked about this at W9DXCC in September, was it? But they've got a great program going here, and I know it is a lot of work, but they've been doing a good job, and I was happy to help them out. So, anyone else? Okay.
Ken, thanks an awful lot. And we really appreciate the time you took to put together this presentation. It was well presented, very, very interesting, as all the questions and comments bear witness to.
You bet. Well, thank you for having me. Glad to do it.
Thank you, Ken. And it was really an enjoyable program. Really appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. I wish everyone a good evening. I don't think the tornadoes got anybody. At least I hope not. And stay safe and hope to see you all here next month.
Bye-bye.